Coach Josh Graham, Sports Hub Triad. I want to talk a bit about Curtis Samuel and your first impression of him, because looking back when you were a GA at Penn State, Curtis, I think you guys upset Ohio State by a field goal, and Curtis had 150 yards, a touchdown in that game or whatever. So what was your first impression of him you remember?
You're talking dating back to the Penn State, Ohio State days?
Yeah.
I know our defensive coaches, I was fortunate to be on the offensive side of the ball, so I didn't have to deal with him too much. But I know our defensive coaches, they stayed up some long nights trying to find ways to stop him. Clearly didn't, slowed him down a little bit. But he's a dynamic football player. So I'm glad I didn't have to game plan for him then. I'm glad teams have to game plan for him now when he's on my side.
Joe, this is Miles Simmons from Panthers.com. How do you feel like you've been able to really learn guys' strengths, and do you feel like you have a good handle on that now going into the regular season after training camp?
Yeah, I think every play in practice, whether it's a call-it period, whether it's scripted, it's intentional, and you're just trying to learn the strengths of each of your players. And so I think that's really the only way that you can go about it. You're seeing things, you're watching it Indy, their movements, and then you're just putting them in different positions. And, I still think, I think you're going to be doing that all throughout the season, because in a training camp, there's only so much you can do, but everything's been intentional. And I think there's a point to that.
Joe, this is Brett Jensen with WBT Radio. I'm curious, without giving too much away, obviously, but, last year at LSU was the greatest collegiate offense any of us had ever seen. How much of that are you able to try to bring to the NFL level? Well, again, without giving all your secrets away, are you able to use a lot of what you did last year in the NFL?
Yeah, look, without giving a lot away, I think, I'd be foolish to not bring a lot of what I did at LSU, to the Carolina Panthers. And, the fortunate thing that we have on our offensive staff is that we have a lot of guys that have been in similar type systems. You got Coach Nixon was the offensive coordinator in Baylor this past year. Jake has been in Alabama. So the spread elements, the tempo, that elements of our game and that we did at LSU, and then a lot of the core concepts, but concepts are what we've kind of done, that's football, X's, those across. It's more of the philosophy and the tempo that you're doing things. And so without giving away a lot of kind of who we are and what we do, I think I'd be foolish not to take some of that element to this level.
Hey, Joe, Jonathan Alexander, Short Observer. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Yeah. I know you all had a little bit of an injury scare with Ian Thomas. I'm curious, what do you think about what you all have behind him, pass catching wise?
Yeah, I think we have we kind of have the mentality that, when guys are injured, we can't blink and the next man has to step up. And so I think the tight ends behind him, whether it's Tamarick Hemingway, whether it's Colin Thompson, whether it's Gio Ritchie, I think they all have different strengths and they all bring something different to the game. And so, I think whenever there's a guy that's injured, it's not necessarily what did that person do that's injured and this person that's coming to do that exact same role. It's more, right, let's find out what Tamarick, Gio, and Colin can do and what Manhertz can do and then figure it out from there, But, obviously you like when everybody's healthy at the and you have all hands on deck. But I'm excited about that tight end group.
Hey, Joe, Steve Reed from the Associated Press. Teddy has talked to us, several times about the injury he overcame several years ago and finally getting a chance to be a starter in this league again. You've been around him. I know you've had conversations with him. How much do you think that impacted him as not only as a football player, but his life? And, how has it, maybe changed him, do you feel like, in conversations with him?
Yeah, I've known about Teddy Bridgewater just being from South Florida. I'm obviously from Broward County. He's from Miami-Dade County. So I've known always about Teddy, and how he is as a football player. And then getting that opportunity to be with him in New Orleans and kind of see how much he's overcome, from that injury. But I think, who Teddy is now, I think is a product of everything that's happened to him, growing up and then the injury. And I think I texted him the other day because I thought it was awesome. He said thank you to, the date that he got injured and it made him the guy that he is now. And, you think 4 years later, he's a franchise quarterback and he's having that opportunity to lead a football team again and to be able to do what he does best and be able to play football again. And so I think he thinks about that stuff daily. He understands what his purpose is. And when you see him out on the football field, how much football means to him. because, it was taken away from him. And so, I think the work ethic that he has, the process that he goes about getting ready, I think some of those things that he might not necessarily had to do prior to the injury and he learned post-injury, I think is the reason that, he's a successful football player today.
Hey, Joe, David Newton with ESPN.com. Something I never asked a coach before, but how good are you at Madden, and how big has Madden been an influence in your life?
It depends if you ask the 12-year-old Joe Brady. I like to think I was good growing up, but I couldn't tell you if I'm any good at it anymore. I don't even think I'd enjoy it right now, because I probably am playing it as a coach, and I'm thinking that a guy should be running a route or attacking a coverage a certain way. So I wish I could say I was good at Madden, but those days are long gone.
Hey, Joe, it's Joe Person. Good to see you. Kind of a related question. A lot of these players and coaches we've talked to, including Phil Snow just a few minutes ago, talk about how you are like all football. And I wonder, is that selling short your kind of like hobbies, et cetera? And if it is, has COVID changed much for your day-to-day kind of existence?
Yeah, I mean, I like to think I'm all ball, but I have a girlfriend, Lauren, that I love very much. I have a dog named Rouge, and so I do have hobbies. It's the issue becomes, when you get consumed with work and you have a job to do, and I lay in bed sometimes, and if I'm not watching The Office, I'm thinking about something that we have to get going the next day. So I do have hobbies, but like yourself, I'm a married guy. We don't have a lot of things that we're great at. So we try to focus on one thing and kind of go from there.
Hey, Joe. Jason Huber with WFNZ. Matt Rule has talked a lot about Mike Davis this offseason and how he's really impressed him at camp. With what have you seen from him and just kind of that competition behind Christian McCaffrey so far?
I've loved what I've seen from Mike Davis. This, the thing about Mike is he came in focused. He came in shape and ready to go. And I think he's taken off. And I have no issues with giving him the ball and putting it in his hands and him, doing what he does. Like, he started football games in this NFL. He's not a young football player. And so, I feel confident that if we call a play and it's going to Mike Davis, that he's going to get the job done.
Hey, Joe, it's Elena Getzenberg. Good to see you. I have two questions for you. One first, are you planning to be in the booth for games? Have you guys figured that out yet?
It's a great question. I've been on the field, like prior to this offseason, I've never been on the field before, but, calling it in practice and calling it, I've enjoyed it. I guess that's something we're still kind of working through. I got to kind of decide on, let's see, I might go in the box at some point one of these next few days just to see, but I've enjoyed it from the field.
And then I was curious for you. I know there's like a lot of people talking about you and, throwing your name around with, calling plays and all that. How do you block out like all the people talking about you? Do you like feel the pressure, or how are you kind of feeling with the game coming up?
It's the most important game because it's the next one. I've kind of always been I don't know if train's the right word, but I've never got caught up into reading anything or, because it's easy to, when things are going well, do you read about you? And when things are going bad, do you not read it? So I've kind of sat there and I've always had the mindset that, hey, what's being said and what the things that are happening don't define who you are. So just wake up every day and with a purpose and embrace the process, and everything will take care of itself.
Joe, this is Brad again with WBT. I'm curious, I'm sure you were asked this a lot at LSU, but when you were coming up and learning the offense and everything, who were the ones that you were who was the person that you were looking to the most for guidance? Who was your guru? Because so many of you young guys, whether it's Sean McVay or whatever, have all these new innovative ideas. Who were the guys that you were looking at?
Well, like I've been fortunate, and from the places that I've been and that the guys that I've coached for. My college head coach, Jimmy Laycock, was a successful offensive, minded head coach for many years. I was at Penn State with James Franklin and Joe Moorhead and Ricky Ronnie, who's a head coach now. I mean, that's the staff that I was on in 2016. I mean, it's an incredible staff that we had at Penn State. So picking their brains and going with, and then I go to New Orleans and, being around guys like Coach Payton and Pete Carmichael, Joe Lombardi. I mean, I've been fortunate everywhere I've been to have guys that I'm learning from firsthand, as opposed to having to study tape and learn from that. Now, I think as all of us coaches, we're all sitting there and finding ways to get better every offseason. And so we're studying what other people are doing and trying to improve from that standpoint. But I've just been truly fortunate from the places that I've been, that I've been able to learn firsthand and ask questions to the guys every single day. And that's kind of got me to the point that I am right now.
Coach Mike Solarte with Spectrum News. Going back to Brett's question before about bringing your philosophies to the next level, are you finding so far through this camp that trying to implement some of the things that you want to do has been maybe easier because you're dealing with pros whose only job is football, as opposed to college kids who are juggling a little bit of class with football and all the things that go along with the college life? Is that transition been a little bit easier? Or the concepts being grasped easier?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously when it's, at the end of the day, these guys are getting paid. This is their job. And so I do think that transition is easy. But, I'm big on the system is, the system is the system, and it takes care of itself. And the guys can believe in my philosophy. They can believe in the system, or whether they do or whether they don't. To me, in order for us to have success, the guys have to believe in one another. And so that's what's been most important to me, seeing how much these guys have bonded, in training camp, seeing their interactions and seeing their chemistry out on the football field. So the way that I'm incorporating, schemes or a philosophy, to me, that's secondhand to seeing how the guys are working with each other after and together, and then believing in one another. Because then if I'm calling plays and they believe in each other, it really doesn't matter what I'm calling. And so to me, that's been the biggest thing.
Joe, Miles Simmons again. With your wide receiver group, I mean, I think that you think of them as having, the top three guys, Anderson, Moore, Samuel. Where do you feel like each of those guys kind of fits in within the scheme? And how do you feel like you can maybe move them around a little bit to kind of maybe keep the defenses off balance?
Well, without giving obviously too many details, they all fit, they all fit into our scheme and exactly what we're looking for. There's not many coaches that are fortunate to have, we don't only have just three, but at least three wide receivers that any given play we feel confident in getting the ball to. And so they all are they're not completely different, but they all bring different strengths to our offense. And, it's my job and our coaches have to put them in positions to have that success. But I'm extremely excited to be able to have three guys on the field as wide receivers and feel confident that if the ball goes to them, they're going to be able to make plays.
On that note, Joe, following up on that, you note how a lot of them are similar. And I think Robbie even said with some teams it's difficult, or it's pretty easy to figure out where a deep threat might be coming from. You got three guys who can potentially be home run hitters. How would you differentiate, though, the skill sets you have between DJ, Robbie, and Curtis?
Again, try not to I mean, I think it's when you look at their body types, obviously I think they're different body types, but the thing that they all bring is they all have, obviously they bring speed, and that, I mean, you turn on the tape and you can feel all of them with speed, but I think the difference in some of them is their body control. Some of them have better body control. Some of them are tougher after the catch. Some are better going up for the football, and but they're all dynamic, and with what they're great at, they're dynamic at. And so, I'm sure you can probably be able to just figure out who exactly I'm talking about. But I think it's exciting as a coach to be able to, because in a lot of offenses that people are in, you're finding ways to get one person the football, and you're trying to move one guy around to get that person the football. And when we're fortunate to be able to line up in the same formation for 5 straight plays and be able to call, 5 different plays to get, 3 receivers the ball and not have to move them around, it makes our lives a lot easier.
Joe, what's something you've learned about McCaffrey you didn't know previously, and what's your kind of philosophy with him as far as use and touches, et cetera?
I learned he's better than I thought he was. The thing I love about Christian McCaffrey, and I learned that he's the guy that how you do anything is how you do everything. Everything matters to him. It's easy to see great players. Christian McCaffrey's a great player, what he did on the football field and what he's done his whole career, but he's not satisfied with that. He wants to get better. So every route that he runs, he's coming back and saying, hey, should I have done that? Every carry, did I miss that? Should I have read that a different way? He's always looking for ways to get better. And as a coach, when you have a great player that's believing in a process and finding ways to get better, to me, that's what I enjoy. I know I got a guy that's not sitting there content with, oh, hey, I had 1,000 yards and 1,000 yards. I'm good with how I'm doing it. And I'm sorry, what was the second part of your question, Joe?
Just how you kind of weigh, of course, you want to win every game and use him, but versus overuse and kind of keeping him fresh for later in the season and later in his career.
Yeah, look, I think the most important thing is every week, special teams, defense, offense coming together and finding out how do we win this football game. And I think and not independent contractors, it's important for everybody to come together, and so we all know the plan to win. And with that, we'll determine how many carries Christian should have, how many touches he needs to have, how many plays he needs to have. And so I'd be lying to you if I said I can go into it with an exact amount. I don't think the amount he had last year was a ridiculous amount of touches. I don't. I think he was kind of on course with a player to his caliber. Touches now. It might more so be when he's getting those touches and how he's getting those touches. But at the end of the day, we want to win football games, and that's the most important thing to him and to us. And then I know when the ball's in his hand, it gives us a great opportunity to win. So we'll cross that path, game by game.
All right, we'll take one more question for Coach Brady. Last question for Coach Brady.
Joe, David Newton again. I wanted to ask you, how much did starting your career off after you were such a great wide receiver at William & Mary, you're starting off as an assistant on a defensive side. What did you learn working with the defense that's helped you become the genius everybody says on offense?
Far from that. I should just start telling people I was a defensive coach because I actually had more tackles in my career than I did, a defensive player because I had more tackles than I did receptions. It might make that transition look a little better. It opened my eyes to so much from a defensive perspective about, obviously from a linebacker standpoint, gaps in run game and protections and identifying that. So then I was able to flip it around as an offensive coach and say, hey, this is what gave me issues when I was a coach. This is what I learned that, these are the coverages that these are the formations that put this coverage, kind of keep us antsy in that situation. So I learned so much from that standpoint of you think offense just because you're a part of it in an offense and all I knew was the wide receiver position. And so when you go to the defensive side, you learn so much about what offenses are doing, how they're attacking you and their coverages. And from a linebacker perspective, you learn everything about the run game and the pass game. And so I would not be the coach I am today if I didn't coach on the defensive side of the ball.
Hey, Coach, I'm sorry. We have one last question from Elena. This is the last one.
Sorry.
You got it, brother.
Sorry. I was just curious, Joe, for you, if you remember or if there's something for you that made you fall in love with football, if there's something, when you were a kid or something specific that you remember, like first falling in love with the game.
Nothing like initially comes to my mind, but my father and I, when someone say, hey, are you all ball? I don't know if my father and I talk about anything besides football. Like, he'll stay if I'm coming home if there's a late nights and I'm coming home at 2 a.m., he'll wake up to talk about the day. And so to me, my love for football started with my father and just, he coached me a lot growing up and, he was hard on me, but, we grew up, I had season tickets going to obviously Miami Dolphin games growing up and all that. We would go to the practices. That's why having Fan Fest and not being able to see the fans and see the kids out there, like that was actually hard on me because I remember how much I appreciated that. So my love for football started with my father, hands down.